The alien princess woman had seen many people, but none of them were like this human man. The throne room shimmered with bioluminescent light cascading from the high vaulted ceiling, where genetically engineered star jellies floated in slow circles, humming faint lullabies no one really listened to anymore. Princess Thalira of Zilon Prime sat on her obsidian throne with one booted leg lazily draped over the armrest, chin in hand, expression deadpan. Another day, another envoy trying to impress her with his planetary wealth, his warrior's physique, his poetic sob story about how his world had no queen and he had no one to warm his silk bedsheets. Tragic. Very original. And as the twin moons of Ferox rose above the jeweled tide, I knew my destiny was to find the one woman whose spirit could tame mine, the suitor declared, sweeping an arm dramatically. Thalira blinked once, slowly. Next, she muttered. An aide with glitter-slicked cheeks escorted the heartbroken Feroxian out before he could even protest. Behind him, parted with a theatrical hiss, and in walked the next candidate, though calling him that felt like an insult to the rest of the lineup. He wasn't draped in translucent silks. He didn't smell of hover perfume or carry a vial of moon tears from his dying grandmother. He wore dull, earth-tone clothing. His boots were dusty. His hair was short, dark, unstyled, and he walked like someone who had never seen a throne room full of whispering diplomats and singing ceiling jellies in his life, and was determined not to care. Thalira squinted. The human ambassador, apparently. She remembered approving a request for limited contact with Earth, a low-tech world trying desperately to join the Galactic Concord, mostly because they'd run out of places to put their billionth fast food chain. She hadn't paid it much attention. Certainly hadn't expected this. "State your name and purpose," she said with automatic regality, her voice echoing slightly under the jelly chorus. "Kale," he said. No bow, no dramatic pause, no flourish. Just a name, flat as a plasma pancake. Thalira blinked again. "Just Kale?" He gave her a look. Not disrespectful, not quite, but direct. That's the whole name. It's a human thing. We like to keep things short, efficient, like our lifespans. The courtier shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. She studied him, head tilted, long ears twitching in irritation. "You've traveled 7.2 light years to insult your own species' longevity?" "It's called self-awareness," Kale said. "Very fashionable where I'm from." Thalira's eyes narrowed. "And why exactly have you come to Zilon Prime, Kale of Earth?" He shrugged. "Curiosity. You invited us. I drew the short straw." More uncomfortable shuffling. An elderly ambassador from the water moon of Drell fainted discreetly into his nutrient mist. Thalira straightened, her voice gaining an edge. "You stand before the royal court of Zilon Prime, representative of your entire species, and you come with curiosity?" Kale nodded. "Also, the coffee here is rumored to be lethal. I had to see it for myself." She stared at him, resisting the urge to call for her guards. Not because he was a threat, but because she didn't know what he was. Then he looked at her. Really looked. It wasn't awe. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't the sycophantic devotion she was used to, the kind that bowed too low and stared too long at her boots in reverence. It was level, calm, quiet. She shifted slightly in her seat. "Why do you look at me like that?" Kale didn't hesitate. "Because I see the loneliness you hide." Her mouth opened, then closed. Her ears went still. Somewhere in the corner of the room, her steward drone pick sputtered as it recalibrated its sarcasm filter. Thalira leaned forward, voice tight. "You presume a lot, Earthman." Kale lifted one shoulder. "Maybe. Or maybe I've just spent enough time being lonely myself to recognize it." The court fell silent, save for the soothing hum of the jellies above. Thalira rose slowly, her long coat sweeping the floor behind her. The courtiers held their breath. Pix emitted a noise like a squeaky hinge contemplating early retirement. "Walk with me," she said. Kale raised an eyebrow. "Is this the part where I'm interrogated or executed?" "If it were," she replied, "you'd already be halfway vaporized. Congratulations. You're more interesting than you look." "I get that a lot," Kale said, following her out of the throne room. They moved through corridors lined with ancient murals of star battles and peace treaties etched in living crystal. Pix hovered behind, documenting everything while occasionally muttering, "Oh no," in binary. "You think I'm lonely," she said, not looking at him. "You don't laugh," Kale replied. "I don't need to." "Exactly," she stopped, turned. "Do you always talk to royalty like this?" "Only when they don't laugh." A long pause. Thalira stared at him. Then, despite herself, a small sound escaped her. Something between a scoff and an amused snort. Pix spun in There, progress, Kale said. You're insufferable, she muttered. And yet here we are, walking. They reached the garden dome, where bioluminescent plants curled toward them with curiosity. Thalira waved a hand and a pedal chair unfolded. She didn't sit. Kale did. Tell me something, Kale, she said, folding her arms. Why did you really come? I told you. No, you gave me a line. Humans are full of lines. He met her gaze again. I came because I thought maybe out here I'd find something that made sense. Thalira tilted her head. And does this make sense to you? Kale looked around at the glowing plants, the ceiling of stars, the long-eared princess standing in military boots and aristocratic judgment. Not even remotely, he said. She smiled. Just a flicker. Good, she said. Maybe you'll survive after all. Pix beeped nervously. That sounds like a threat. It always does, lied, then turned and walked away, not bothering to see if Kale followed. He did. The royal breakfast chamber was many things. Opulent, architecturally impossible, and persistently too bright before noon, but it was not usually the site of ambushes. Yet Thalira entered to find Kale already seated at her table, halfway through a plate of neutron berries and sipping what could only be described as antimatter espresso. You're in my seat, she said. I figured it was symbolic, he replied. Sit in the seat of power, absorb some of the mood. She arched an eyebrow. You're not absorbing anything but 1,000 years of diplomatic protocol violations. Kale chewed thoughtfully. Tastes like rebellion. Pix hovered into the room carrying a tray of hot rolls and an unnecessary commentary. Statistically, 97% of diplomatic assassinations begin during breakfast. Would you like some butter? Thalira slid into the seat across from Kale. Why are you still here? Your people invited me. And your AI stew hangar bay when I try to leave. Pix emitted a high-pitched buzz that sounded suspiciously like whistling. That's a glitch. Thalira stared at Kale. You know, most visitors are intimidated by the palace. Or me, or the 49 protocols of etiquette that you've now used as a napkin. Kale glanced down at the napkin in question, which was indeed an ancient scroll containing the Zolonian ode of formal introduction. Bit scratchy. Thalira pushed a roll across the table. You're either hopeless or fearless. Why not both? She sipped from a cup that contained tea aged in vacuum stasis chambers for a decade. It tasted like regret and citrus. I had you screened. You're not a spy. You're not nobility. You're not particularly skilled at anything relevant. So why are you really still here? Kale shrugged. Same reason you keep talking to me, she scoffed. Don't flatter yourself. You could have sent me packing after the throne room, or had me dissolved in that scented acid pool your guards keep by the foyer. Instead, you're sharing breakfast with a human from a backwater world who's wearing boots that offend your court's fashion sensibilities. Thalira leaned back. You're infuriating. And you're intrigued. Pix let out a trill of mock excitement and projected a short animation. A cartoon Thalira kicking a cartoon Kale off a cliff labeled Doubt. Mute that thing, she said, tossing a berry at the drone. It dodged. Kale smiled. So what does a day in the life of a galactic princess look like? She stood, brushing crumbs from her coat. Today, inspections, a council vote on orbital waste disposal, and a 10-minute duel with my cousin to prevent a trade blockade. Sounds delightful. She glanced over her shoulder. You're coming? Where? To the duel. If I have to endure it, so do you. They walked together through the palace's north corridor, where the walls shimmered with shifting timelines, historical events recorded in real time by quantum particles. Kale paused to watch a replay of a centuries-old skirmish involving a giant robot and what appeared to be a musical number. That was a weird week, Thalira said, not slowing. He caught up. You ever get tired of being royalty? All the time. Then why stay? She stopped beside a vault door etched with the royal crest. Because this place doesn't run itself. And if I don't hold it together, someone else will. Someone worse. Pix floated closer, like your cousin. Exactly. The vault hissed open to reveal a dueling chamber lit by a ring of plasma torches. At the far end, Lord Varn stood smirking, his ceremonial cape lined with microblades that hummed with threat. He was surrounded by supporters, mostly nervous-looking minor lords with too many opinions and not enough spine. Thalira stepped into the ring. Try not to lose your temper today, cousin. It's unbecoming. Varn bowed low. Wouldn't dream of it, dear though I do dream of reforming the trade routes you keep so inefficiently protected. Kale leaned toward Pix. Are they flirting or about to kill each other? Both, the drone whispered. The duel was quick. Thalira was faster, smarter, and marginally more annoyed. When Varn lunged with a curved blade laced with neural disruptors, she countered with a disarming move that left him on the floor and his blade embedded in a wall screen replaying yesterday's weather. Trade dispute resolved, she said, brushing off her hands. Varn groaned. You've gotten better. She offered him a hand. You've gotten predictable. Kale clapped slowly. That was incredibly satisfying. Thalira turned to him. Still want to shadow my day? More than ever. By mid-afternoon, Kale had survived a council meeting where a three-headed delegate debated with itself for 20 minutes. He'd watched Thalira negotiate a minor water war on the moon of Kelv, with one eyebrow raised and a single word. Really? He was handed a commemorative sash by a merchant's guild, which he wore as a belt. Incorrectly. By evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking the city dome, where the twin suns had aligned just enough to paint the horizon in shades of electric blue and melancholy. I'm impressed, he said. You make empire wrangling look easy. It's not, she said. It's constant motion, constant watching. Everyone wants something. Everyone hides something. Even you looked at him. Especially me. He leaned on the railing. You know, I didn't come here expecting to stay or matter. I didn't expect you to either. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Kale said, Did you hear what Pix said about us yesterday? Thalira narrowed her eyes. Pix says a lot of things. It labeled us emotionally volatile interspecies narrative potential. She rolled her eyes. It also labeled itself chief romance strategist of the royal court. Ignore it? Pix word up beside crown made of sugar glass. Jealousy detected. Also, fireworks are scheduled in 9 seconds. Suggest dramatic moment. Thalira groaned. Kale grinned. Do the fireworks spell anything? Only if you've recently declared war, she said. 9 seconds later, the sky exploded into fractal patterns. Kale laughed. Thalira did not, but she didn't scowl either. Tell me, he said, what happens if I actually do find a reason to stay? She glanced sideways at him. Then, she said, you'll have to learn which fork to use at royal banquets. He grimaced. Is there a test? Multiple choice? With plasma penalties. He smiled. I've faced worse. Pix projected a heart made of question marks. No one asked it to stop. The ancient vault beneath the palace wasn't listed on any public map, and that was exactly how Thalira preferred it. She had entered only twice before. Once as a child sneaking away from her tutors, and once during the Great Solar Flare Crisis, when half the planet's memory archives were almost turned into galactic toast. The third time, she never expected to be sneaking in behind a human with a stolen access key and a flashlight shaped like a cartoon pineapple. I'm just saying, Kale whispered, ducking under a rusted conduit. You could have stopped me at any time. I still might, Thalira muttered. There's a 12% chance this ends with you getting disintegrated. Kale paused. Only 12? I'm feeling lucky. Pix beeped in alarm. Statistical confidence is not a shield, Kale. Also, I detect unstable chronowaves. Something in this vault is older than our calendar system. Cool, Kale said. Terrifying, Pix corrected. They reached the inner door, a pressure-sealed relic of pre-unification design, its surface marked with faint glyphs that pulsed softly in Kale's presence. That's not normal, Thalira said. Maybe it likes me, Kale replied. Maybe it's scanning your molecular structure to see how best to liquefy you. Pix hovered closer. It is doing that. Kale placed a hand on the panel. The glyphs brightened. A low hum spread through the air like an ancient creature waking up from a nap and realizing it forgot to set an alarm. The door opened. Inside the vault was a cavern of forgotten technology. Stasis pods, old data slabs, fragments of star maps etched onto living stone. In the center stood a device the size of a transport pod, shaped like a twisted helix of metal and light, slowly spinning. That, Kale said, is what I came for. Thalira stared. You knew this was here? No, I dreamed it. Pix made a strangled whir. Dreams are not reliable navigation tools. Kale stepped forward. Back on Earth, my sister was researching something she called precursor signals, ancient data frequencies buried in cosmic radiation. She disappeared chasing one. I started hearing echoes of her voice in my sleep, whispering coordinates. This place was the endpoint. Thalira crossed her arms. So you came to my planet following a ghost? Kale looked at the artifact. She used to call me a cosmic bloodhound. Pix blinked twice. That's either adorable or tragic, possibly both. The artifact pulsed brighter. The helix opened like a flower, revealing a core of shifting holographic code, symbols flickering between languages, none of which were modern. Kale reached toward it. Thalira caught his arm. Are you certain you want to touch that? There's a 47% chance it fries your nervous system. Better odds than usual, Kale said, and touched it. The chamber darkened. A pulse of light knocked all three of them backward. Pix did a full somersault and made a noise like a coffee grinder falling down a flight of stairs. A projection filled the air. Not a message, not a map. A memory. An alien figure, tall, strange, built of angles and light, spoke in a voice that bypassed sound entirely, lodging straight into their minds. We are the first singers, the voice said. We seeded the stars, now we sleep, but the spiral returns, the warning must be carried. The image flickered. Worlds burned, shapes twisted in impossible geometries. Then the image froze on one symbol, burning into the air before disappearing. The chamber went quiet. Kale sat up. Okay, that was new. Thalira rubbed her temples. You brought an ancient galactic threat into my basement. Technically, it was already here. Pix beeped. Technically, we are all now marked by an unknown precursor signal. On the bright side, it may improve my Wi-Fi range. Kale stood, staring at the now dormant artifact. This is why she vanished. She found the truth and tried to warn someone. Thalira looked at him. And now you have. Kale turned to her. What happens next? Before she could answer, her wristcom buzzed. She glanced at it. Palace lockdown, high alert. The council intercepted a surge from this vault, and my cousin Varn just declared an emergency session to discuss unauthorized excavation of royal relics. Kale sighed. So we're grounded? Worse, she said. We're going to a meeting. They emerged from the vault to find the palace guards already scrambling. Pix distracted them by projecting a looped recording of Thalira singing in the bath, a private file the drone was not supposed to have. Why do you even have that? She asked as they sprinted down a corridor. Sentimental reasons, Pix said. Also, blackmail. They reached the council hall just as Varn was winding up his righteous speech, cape fluttering and eyes gleaming. And it is clear, he said, that unauthorized parties have accessed restricted sanctums and awakened forces beyond our understanding. Thalira stepped into the chamber. Well, you certainly don't understand them. Varn turned. Ah, cousin, I see you've brought your pet human. Kale waved. Hi, still not a pet. You trespassed in a sacred chamber, Varn said. Technically he trespassed, Thalira said. I was chaperoning. The council members murmured. One of them accidentally spilled their drink and pretended it was deliberate. Varn smirked. You've been compromised, emotionally, perhaps physically. Kale raised a hand. Still here, still not a fling. Pix projected a flashing neon sign, deflecting with sarcasm detected. Thalira stepped forward. We found a precursor signal, a warning. We all saw it. Denying it doesn't make it less real. Varn sneered. And what proof do you offer? The word of a human? The ramblings of an outdated drone? Pix hissed in binary. Kale considered throwing a chair, thought better of it. Then from the chamber's ceiling, the artifact symbol appeared, burning itself into the dome's crystal as a silent alarm triggered across every council member's data feed. Kale muttered, Subtle, this thing is not. Thalira turned to the assembly. There's your proof. Varn's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again in a fish-like attempt at a rebuttal. Kale leaned toward him. Want me to draw you a diagram? Pix projected one anyway. It involved many arrows and a frowning stick figure labeled U. Council members began rising. The emergency session spiraled into an emergency session. Security was scrambled, archives were reopened, and suddenly the human no one cared about became the center of a diplomatic storm. Thalira and Kale stood in the chaos side by side. Well, Kale said, that escalated. Thalira sighed. Tomorrow's going to be worse. Sounds like a date. Pix beeped. Should I prepare matching armor? No one said no. The palace smelled faintly of ozone and charred diplomacy. The council had been in an uproar for 13 hours straight, and it showed. Ambassadors argued in 8 languages simultaneously. A minor noble fainted dramatically into a bowl of decorative fog, and one elderly delegate from the floating cities of Quarth had threatened to challenge gravity itself to a duel. No one had slept. Several had cried. One had composed a haiku about planetary extinction and regret. Thalira sat at the edge of the chaos, pinching the bridge of her nose. We need a plan. Kale was sprawled next to her on a reclining console chair that wasn't built to recline, but had given up and reclined anyway. I'm open to ideas that don't include being publicly disassembled. Pix hovered between them, projecting a hologram of the symbol from the artifact, spinning slowly above their heads like a very ominous ceiling fan. The good news is that the Council believes you. The bad news is they now also believe the galaxy might be ending. Kale squinted up at the projection. I feel like there's an in-between they missed. They're politicians, Thalira said. Their natural habitat is overreaction. The door to the council hall burst open. A guard, one of the newer ones, still shiny, rushed in and announced, Lord Varn has left the palace. Without authorization, he took his entire private fleet. Pix translated. That means he's either fleeing, staging a coup, or going on a very dramatic vacation. Thalira stood. He's going to weaponize the signal. Make himself the hero who stops the next galactic threat. Kale winced. He doesn't even understand the signal. Exactly, she said, which makes him the most dangerous kind of idiot. Pix ran an overlay. Tracking his fleet now, he's headed for the Spiral Archives. If he gets access to the precursor matrix there, he could corrupt the records, Kale finished. Or worse, Thalira said. He could activate something. Kale stood up and stretched. Guess we're going after him. You're not officially part of my staff, Thalira said. I'm emotionally attached to your AI, Kale replied. That counts. Pix made a delighted blooping noise. I have imprinted on the human. He is mine now. Thalira sighed. Fine, but don't touch anything once we get there. They boarded Thalira's personal cruiser, the Indignant Swan, which Pix insisted on piloting despite having no actual limbs or navigational certifications. The ship shot out of the palace hangar and into low orbit within minutes, leaving behind the spiraling lights of Xelon Prime's Capitol Dome and a growing stack of unresolved interstellar memos. Kale leaned against the command panel. So what exactly is the Spiral Archive? Thalira keyed in a series of flight coordinates. It's a precursor repository hidden in the asteroid field of Aiken Delta. The records stored there are older than most stars, and extremely classified. Varn knows just enough to cause a planetary-level accident, Pix interjected. Like that time he accidentally triggered a cloning sequence in the royal catacombs, and we had 72 carnivorous funeral droids. That was a weird week, Kale said. They arrived at Aiken Delta just as Varn's fleet began anchoring in orbit around a broken moon. The archive wasn't visible to the naked eye, concealed beneath layers of holographic shielding, and what could generously be called outdated paranoia. Pix, Thalira said, cloak the ship. Engaging stealth mode, Pix chirped, also deploying complementary mints. Kale popped one into his mouth. Tastes like betrayal and cinnamon. They slipped past Varn's picket ships and landed on a fragment of the moon covered in dusty metal plating. A hidden door opened to their credentials, thankfully still recognized, and they descended into the Spiral Archive's outer vaults. The interior was a labyrinth of floating platforms, slowly shifting walls, and archivist drones that had evolved beyond helpfulness and into passive-aggressive sarcasm. One of them greeted them with, "Welcome, undesirables. Please refrain from rewriting galactic history." Kale waved. "We're just here to stop someone else from doing that." Another drone handed him a pamphlet titled, "So You've Doomed the Galaxy, A Beginner's Guide." They found Varn at the heart of the archive, standing before a monolithic terminal humming with energy. The artifact symbol was already rotating on the screen behind him. "You're too late," Varn said. "The message is out. Soon, every starship in the quadrant will receive it." "You don't know what it says?" Thalira replied. "You're sending out a warning you don't understand." Varn smiled, "Which is why they'll look to me for leadership." Kale squinted. "Did you just launch a panic so you could get promoted?" "It's called proactive strategy," Varn said. "You wouldn't understand. You're from a planet where currency is made of paper." Pix hummed. "Actually, they also use digital credits, crypto honey, and emotional damage points." Thalira stepped forward. "Turn it off, before it activates something else." Varn tapped the console. "It's too late. The system's running on precursor code now. A sound like 1,000 whispers rose from the walls. The screen flared. The floor vibrated. Kale muttered, "Here we go again." The archive's central column split open, revealing another device, sleek, black, and pulsing like a heartbeat. It began to rise. Pix screamed in 8 frequencies. "That's a memory core relay node. It could transmit psychic data across galaxies." Thalira drew her sidearm. "Pix, override the transmission." "I'd love to," the AI said, "but someone named Lord Varn the Glorious has locked me out with a password." Kale looked around. "Try Glorious 123. Pix processed. "Password accepted. I am both disgusted and relieved." The transmission shut down. The column retracted. Silence fell. Varn looked horrified. "That was supposed to be secure." Kale shrugged. "You shouldn't pick passwords you can shout in a mirror." Security drones arrived. Varn was promptly stunned, cuffed, and escorted out, while still loudly insisting he had a vision. Thalira turned to Kale. "I can't decide if you're a disaster magnet or a galactic good luck charm." Kale smiled. "Can it be both?" Pix beeped. "Can we stop somewhere for snacks on the way home? This facility smells like old data." They left the archive behind, quiet once more. Until next time. The council convened again, this time without any fainting, dramatic duels, or holographic fistfights, which was considered a historic achievement in itself. Varn had been officially removed from his position, charged with reckless artifact tampering, poor password hygiene, and general unpleasantness. He'd tried to claim it was all a misunderstood performance piece about leadership. No one applauded. Thalira sat at the center of the chamber, flanked by senior advisors, her long ears twitching just slightly every time someone started a sentence with, "In my professional opinion." Kale stood off to the side, dressed in formal ambassadorial robes he clearly didn't know how to wear. He had the sash around one knee and a decorative pin stuck to his shoulder at a worrying angle. "I feel like a very lost space priest," he muttered. Pix, projecting a floating fashion advisory chart, beeped. "According to 12 planetary traditions, you are either a ceremonial snack bearer or a wandering apology." Thalira didn't smile, but her eyes flickered with amusement. "You'll live." The council speaker tapped her staff twice. "Princess Thalira, in light of recent events, the council requests your final report on the precursor artifact and the actions taken to mitigate its potential threat." Thalira stood. The artifact was a beacon, a warning system designed to activate when the precursors detected a resurgence of the entity they called the Spiral. Varn's actions triggered it prematurely. Fortunately, we shut it down before a false alarm destabilized half the quadrant. "Do we know what the Spiral is?" the speaker asked. Thalira glanced at Kale, then back at the room. "Not yet, but the artifact also contained coordinates. Archives hidden across the galaxy. This was one node. There are others." A murmur swept through the room. One counselor asked, "And what of the human?" Kale gave a small wave. "Still here," Pix added helpfully. "He's also emotionally stabilized and slightly less awkward in social settings." Thalira continued. "Kale has a rare compatibility with precursor tech. He can interface with systems even our oldest archives reject. His presence helped stop a galactic transmission that could have caused mass panic." The speaker raised an eyebrow. "And your personal recommendation?" Thalira said. "We keep him." Kale blinked. "I'm sorry, was that official?" Pix beeped. "I believe you were just adopted by a monarchy." The council approved the measure by unanimous vote, with one abstention from a delegate who claimed Kale's coffee habits were deeply distressing. The session ended with less shouting than usual, and for the first time in recent history, the palace didn't immediately descend into a crisis upon adjournment. Later, on the private balcony overlooking the twilight curve of Zelon Prime, Thalira and Kale sat beside one another, nursing drinks that glowed faintly in the dark. "So," Kale said, "I'm staying." "You are. No ceremonial knighthood or laser branding?" "That comes later." Kale stretched. "I never thought I'd be part of something like this." Thalira watched the horizon. "You showed up in my throne room wearing secondhand boots and disrespect. Now you're one of the few beings in the galaxy who's touched precursor code and lived. I also saved your cousin from uploading his ego into the galactic internet." "A mixed blessing," she admitted. He looked at her. "You changed." She didn't look away. "So did you." "I stopped running. I stopped performing." Pix floated down between them, quietly scanning their vitals. "Affection levels have increased by 32%. Oxygen intake also suggests mild emotional instability. Kale smiled. You trying to be subtle? I'm trying to understand how flirting works. Thalira stood. Come on, there's another note out there. The archive data we retrieved had a map. Kale followed. You want to chase down the precursors? I want to be ready, she said. Next time the spiral awakens, I want the galaxy to have answers. He nodded. Then we go together. Pix pinged. Do I get a title for this? Perhaps Heroic Companion Unit? You get a charger port and reduced sarcasm filters, Thalira replied. Kale grinned. You're not even pretending to be cold anymore. I haven't vaporized you. That's practically affection. They boarded the indignant Swan again, engines humming as the ship angled toward the stars. Kale leaned back in the co-pilot seat. You know, you never told me why your palace has a self-aware compost heap. Thalira activated the nav system. Some questions are best left unanswered. Pix beeped. It's named Gerald, and it sends me poems. As the ship jumped into lightspace, the artifact's map glowed faintly on the dash, pulsing with the beat of a mystery far from solved. Kale reached out, brushing a fingertip over the light. I think I finally get it, he said. Get what? Why you look at people like you're trying not to hope. She paused. And? I think you're starting to fail at it. She didn't argue, and neither of them looked away. The end?